Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. A good start of your week. Actually, I thought this was the day that people were going to celebrate or take off for Veterans Day. So that's how I was thinking. I didn't realize, oh, Friday's here and people were already taking off. I was thinking the Monday. People would rather take the Monday off after the Veterans Day celebration. But no, there was lots of celebrating over the weekend for the veterans. And I want to recommend you listen to the recorded version of the full interview I did with Dr. Theo Gonzalez of the Smithsonian Institute, an APA curator who is the editor author. He wrote maybe 60% of the text for the book, but he was the overall editor. It's the Smithsonian's Asian Pacific American 101 Cultural Art Historical Objects. It's published by the Smithsonian, but it will give you a sense of Asian American or Asian Pacific American history, all in 101 objects. And he, as he mentions in the interview, he cheats a little bit in that, let's see. Oh, the music just died on us. How can that happen, Emil? You didn't put it on repeat? Oh, must be. You didn't put it on loop, Emil. Okay. No, as he said that, you have areas. So it's like a 101 object areas, and then you can have other objects. Anyway, for the holiday, I thought it was a good idea to talk about the congressional gold medals that were given to the Chinese Americans, the Filipino Americans, and the Japanese American soldiers who fought during World War II. Still a segregated army, but it was our fighting forces. The thing is, these medals didn't come until 2020. I mean, really, late 2000s, or well, not late 2000s, but it didn't come till 2000. The war was over in the 1940s. It took that long to get up the political gumption to say, hey, these guys were warriors. They deserve the highest medal that Congress gives an American citizen, the Congressional Gold Medal. So I say it's featured in the book because it is. You see all three medals all at the same time. And so Theo talks about that. But of course, there are other things, other objects of art, cultural, historical interest. It's really a fascinating book. If you are, and if you're listening to this, then I know you may be a fan of my micro talk show on AAPI issues. I subtitle it, "What Does an Asian American Think?" Because what does an Asian American think? We don't know. I mean, we rarely see Asian Americans out there, or at least more and more so now. But we're a silent minority. We're getting louder. And this is a show that highlights things of interest to an Asian American crowd. Of course, you don't have to be Asian American. But I know if you're listening to this, you probably would get into Theo's interview, the interview I did with him. It's on my YouTube channel at Emil Amok 1. Just check it out on YouTube after this. And he talks about how the book was created and some key objects. And I'll talk about some of my favorite key objects, in time. But in the interview, I do talk about one called specifically the Chinese argument, which is a ceramic design that was brought out in the 50s and 60s. And it really captures a kind of a, well, is it race? This is the debate. Is it racist, or is it just, this is the way American thinkers or people, when they thought about Asians, this is how they saw us. and the design was in a lot of really normal, everyday household items like tea sets and little vases. And I think what it does show is how deep the racism antipathy toward Asian Americans, how deeply it was held throughout throughout the years. And it just shows you how much we have to overcome, or have had to overcome, or we're still overcoming it. I mean, people look at those objects and say, "Oh, we're taking them down. They're not there." Yeah, you can remove them and you can banish them, but they're still part of our history. They're still lodged in our memory. And if not in our memory, then certainly in the memory of those who perpetrated them and think that they were a significant expression in American life. The racism toward not just Asians, but there's some blacks depicted in these ceramics. It shows a totem pole. Anyway, listen to the interview I did with Theo. We'll talk more about it in the days ahead. It's a nice reference, the Smithsonian APA 101 Art, Cultural, and Historical Objects, put together by Professor Dr. Theodore Gonzalez, old friend of mine, and I'm just glad to see him put out a book like this, because it helps put into context a lot of these things that you may have seen and some things that you may not know of. So that's one thing to start off the week. If you haven't done it yet, check it out sometime. This is a big week for APEC, the big Asian Pacific economic gathering in San Francisco. Some say it's the Super Bowl of Asian countries, and some there's some Latin American countries also included. But they're all gathered in San Francisco, and a lot of people are saying, I'm not going because the traffic's bad, and because, I mean, there's all sorts of things converging on San Francisco, including protesters. So we'll see how that goes in the coming days. President Biden should be there because President Xi's from China is supposed to be there. I know have heard of activists from all sorts of Asian American groups going down there to protest all issues: climate change, the Israel-Hamas war, the global economy, lots of issues. And President Bong Bong Marcos is going to be there. So I may yet be there. That's coming up. And of course, a lot of people say that, okay, Biden and Xi will meet. That's going to be a big deal. But for many people, this is a big deal to either turn around this idea that, oh, San Francisco is a big mess. It's dirty. It's filthy. There's homeless people abound. And there are a lot of homeless people, no doubt. A lot of homeless people. But a lot of people are also coming away saying, hey, the city's really cleaned up. It's about time. So we'll see how that goes. For a long time, there's been a number of different events over the weekend leading up to the big kickoff this week. But, I mean, there was some night markets in Chinatown. There was another thing happening. There were protests down at the Embarcadero. So people are keyed up. This is a focal point for the world. Of course, you're not really hearing much of it in the national news. I didn't see any mention of it this week yet, but the week is young. The story that has made an impression on most people is former President Donald Trump using the term vermin to denounce his detractors, to denounce his critics. And frankly, my wife, the animal rights activist from Peter, would say, why bring the vermin into this? Why bring innocent animals? Don't they go through enough? I mean, but it does show a kind of speciesism that is sort of like, it's there. You may not notice it's you think there's unconscious racism and sexism. What do you do when you use animals? That's a kind of speciesist thing that no one ever thinks about. Of course, animal rights people think about it all the time. Oh my God, bringing up vermin, the rats, those innocent creatures. Why are you doing that? Comparing, people you disagree with vermin? And of course, historians look at the term vermin as used as political rhetoric, and they say, wow, Donald Trump is invoking the same rhetoric that Hitler and Mussolini did, that dictators and autocrats and fascists used in the past. He's bringing it up in a new American context. And is there outrage, or are people just saying, oh, that's Donald Trump being Donald Trump? Well, that's fine as long as Donald Trump is not a serious candidate for president, which he is. That's the problem in our democracy. And it's high time that people just say, wait a minute. He just used the term vermin. And as I said in my little tweets out to the people, hey, come listen to our show. Vermin, welcome. I welcome the vermin. But Donald Trump is showing how scared people should be of any kind of potential for an incoming new term for the former president. Because as we talked about last week, the Washington Post already reporting about how the pre-Trump administration folks are trying to gather around not just conservatives or Republicans. They're gathering together extreme MAGA, extreme radical MAGA. Some people even say that, oh, Donald Trump is a moderate when it comes to extremist views. There are people more extreme than Donald Trump, and he's recruiting them to go after what Donald Trump called the vermin. Now, if you missed what Donald Trump had to say about the vermin, let me play a clip. This was in New Hampshire. He was speaking to veterans, and this is what Donald Trump had to say about his detractors in a speech to, I guess it was a Trump rally in New Hampshire.
We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
Wow. Can you get that? We pledged you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists. Oh, he's talking about himself? The radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. He said it. I mean, I think he does it sort of unconsciously, right? This is just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. Well, it's not good enough to be a second-term president. I hope this instills a certain fear in people about what kind of person this man, this 4-time indicted, 91 counts felony, what kind of person this guy is. If it hasn't sunk in yet, I don't think it has. Shall we hear it again?
We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
Wow. That's what he said. Oh, now I'll let him go on a little more. The vermin that live within the confines of our country.
That lie and and steal and cheat on elections and will do anything possible. They'll do
Oh.
anything.
He's talking about people who do anything possible, like lie and steal and cheat on elections. You mean Republicans? He's going to do this on Republicans? See, this is where the Donald is kind of, he's confusing the public. You see that? You see that now, huh?
Within the confines of our country that lie and steal and cheat on elections and will do anything possible. They'll do anything, whether legally or illegally, to destroy America and to destroy the American dream. The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Wow.
He's saying
the threat from outside forces is less sinister than the threat from within. Okay. I know, warning sign, put up the red flags. And, you know, it's not like there isn't enough to make you think that something is wrong here. We need to do something. But there's still 35% of the American public who sees Donald Trump and say, yeah, we need him. We need that guy. And they're generally, you know, the MAGA and extreme MAGA types on the right. You know, funny, during the pandemic, I did a show and I talked about, you know, MAGA types and why people would like this sort of person. Why people would be extreme. It's because they want their own pit bull. They want the rules skewed for them, and they figured this is the way we do it. Authoritarianism, we just get rid of our enemies. We do it the tough way. And I'm telling you, if there isn't an outright condemnation of this kind of talk from Donald Trump, we might end up with, it's not a Trump fantasy. It's really, well, it's his fantasy. He wants to make it a reality. But if you're a pro-democracy American, you will do all within your power to make sure Donald Trump doesn't get elected. Because he's already setting it up. All the things that we fought over in his first term, the Muslim ban, he wants to round up undocumented immigrants and put them in camps and then deport them. America's forced people to self-deport in the past. We know that. Asians in America in the 30s, Filipino Americans, or Filipinos, they were in America in the 30s. Donald Trump wants to revisit all that again. And when it happened to Asian Americans, they set them up in camps in the Bay Area. It was called Angel Island. There's a small island in San Francisco Bay. That's where they sent Asians, China, from the Philippines, before they were deported back, before they self-deported. Of course, most Filipinos who were here, you know, many for decades, because some came as early as 1910, teens, the 20s. By 1930, when the law, the Tidings-McDuffie Act, asked Filipinos to self-deport, many Filipinos wouldn't do it. They just kept their heads down. And, you know, that's what encouraged our community silence. They didn't want to be seen. They didn't want to be heard. They didn't want to cause trouble because they knew the psychological impact that a self-deportation law had was, well, you don't want to go back to the Philippines because then you would be admitting to your relatives that something went wrong that you weren't successful. And you didn't want to like say, here we are, we're Filipino, because, they want you self-deported. They'll just regularly deport you if they really want you out. So it encouraged a kind of repression. And, it really substantiated, or it justified the oppression. And then Filipinos, despite the fact that they were still free, they had a choice to deport or not. They repressed their sense of self, keeping their heads down. That's the danger of all this talk when you talk about the vermin. Talk about the sense that we have a right to free speech in our country. When you have someone who wants to be president says, no, you can't, you do not have free speech. What happens then? You don't have an America. You don't have a democracy. That's what happens. That's the problem with Donald Trump using the term vermin. And you'll hear historians say, yeah, well, Mussolini used that term and Hitler used that term. And now you have Donald Trump using that term on Saturday and just saying, yeah, I said it. Yeah, I mean you. Yeah, this is going to happen. Yeah, this is where our country is going. And you would hope that the voters are smart enough to say, we love our democracy. We would never vote for a person like that. Well, you got Tim Scott dropping out today from the Republican race, and he was a guy who was trying to be nice. America doesn't want nice anymore. At least the Republicans seem to like Donald Trump. And will anything change after the widespread talk and commentary about his comments on Saturday, when once again in New Hampshire, this was Donald Trump?
We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin.
Wow, the communists, Marxists, fascists, and radical left-wing thugs that live like vermin. And when Hillary Clinton used the polysyllabic deplorables to describe people on the right and their hate-filled antics, did anyone back up Hillary? No, they went after her. Oh, she used the term deplorable. Oh, our feelings are hurt. I don't know if you can hurt the right wing's feelings, but the right wing said their feelings were hurt. And they went after Hillary as a mask for the misogyny that they felt toward Hillary. Oh, she used the term deplorable. How deplorable. And now here's Donald Trump. At least when Hillary used the term deplorable, he was talking about humans, an adjective describing human behavior. Donald Trump is using animals, nouns, to describe human beings, to make them less than human, to make them expendable. And it's a rhetoric that divides, conquers, and we saw it. It won in 2016. It did not win in 2020, fortunately. But will it win again? Will it come back and win in 2024? You see what's happening with the Republicans. The Republicans are nowhere. Tim Scott, who is trying to be the nice guy. Last debate, trying to be the nice guy. Hey, I got a girlfriend. Hey, I'm good, America. Look, I got a girlfriend. I'm normal. I'm African American. I'm a nice guy. You don't run away from me. He can't make any inroads against Donald Trump. And so he quit. He suspended his campaign. And now I guess it's up to Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis to make some kind of push. I don't see DeSantis doing it, so I guess it's up to Nikki Haley, who is, I know there's not much I like about Vivek Ramaswamy, but when he called Nikki Haley Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, I don't think we need, maybe if she moderated, would she be better than Trump? I think Nikki Haley would have a little more empathy. I think. But Donald Trump, like I said, Vermin, welcome here. I just hope that we begin to see something on the right that amounts to a criticism, because so far, no one has been able to right the right. Mike Pence, who the extremists wanted to lynch on January 6th, he's gone. The guy out of North Dakota, he's gone. You got Chris Christie, who's essentially gone. Tim Scott, essentially gone. Oh, he is gone. Tim Scott he's suspended his campaign. Chris Christie is essentially gone, and he's the only one who has stood up and been negative. He's gone and been critical of Donald Trump. Nikki Haley hasn't been critical enough. DeSantis is trying, but boy, DeSantis is, you can see why you can criticize Trump if you're on DeSantis, but people see DeSantis and say, is he the replacement? I want someone with some teeth. Well, teeth and some morals and some values. Trump doesn't have those. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for, and when I say values for an American democracy, I mean, Donald Trump can talk about the American dream. He can talk about democracy, but what he's saying, what the Washington Post has reported and has said that Trump is planning for in a second potential Trump term, to go after and jail his critics, including some on the right, like Bill Barr, who probably could use some jail time. But, General Milley, this is a problem. I hope we rectify it, America, because it makes you realize when people talk about the experiment known as democracy, well, it's an experiment. It's an experiment, all right. So I started off hopeful, I guess, this week. It's Monday. The 49ers won. The Warriors lost, but the 49ers won. So that's good. I mean, I felt good. I mean, the 49ers just crushed Jacksonville. And so I was feeling kind of good, and then not. I got some deadlines I have to meet. I got some things to do. This APEC thing is starting up, and I don't know. I just hope that people protest and get their word out and get their voices heard. I just hope there's no violence. I know there's a lot of cops in San Francisco that they've imported from neighboring cities, so they've got a substantial force. I'm just hoping for peace. I would like there to be protests, but no violence. If we can have that, I think it'd be great. Then the world leaders who do show up will know how serious people are about climate change. And who better than President Xi to hear that message? I also think that with the geopolitical focus being mostly on Israel and Hamas, we got to think about where China stands, how China complicates things. Because between China and Russia and Iran, and then you got what's going on in the Middle East, the world has become much more complicated just within the last, how many months? Well, it was certainly within the last year than it's been. And I was going to talk about David Remnick's column in the New Yorker last week. I didn't have time, but essentially he was being optimistic. And really, there is reason to be optimistic. Every time I take a pessimistic stand, I realize, no, I should be optimistic. Just like on Israel and Hamas. You think, oh my God, how are we going to get out of this situation where you want to be pro-Israel, you also want to be pro-Palestinian. It really is a war between Israel and Hamas, but how do you make sure that people aren't killed needlessly? We have the hospital situation, and we have protests. All this is affecting. There's the war there, and then there's the war here in America. And this could be the thing that helps Trump ride to victory in 2024, because Americans are too distracted. Americans want to isolate. Americans don't want to care. In the meantime, we have a lot of problems here with just good old-fashioned racism. Forget about Israel and Hamas. There's a lot of anti-Semitism coming out because people don't see the difference between Israel, the U.S. supporting Israel, and Jews here in America. And so there's attacks against Jews here in America, anti-Semitism. We don't need that in America. We don't need Islamophobia. We don't need anti-Arab tension either. How do we get to peaceful, nonviolent exchange of our ideas? That's what we need to get to. And how do we make sure that people feel heard and that situation in Thousand Oaks, California, where an Jewish American with an Israeli flag was pushed, hit his head, died. They're calling it a homicide, and the suspect is a pro-Palestinian professor at a community college. We need to get a better handle on this as a country. We can express ourselves. We can express disagreement. We don't have to resort to violence. We just don't. Like I said, you can be pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian at the same time. That's how you get to peace. And that's my interest. I don't know how we get there, considering the hostage situation and the bombing by the IDF in Gaza. Joe Biden is saying, hey, we got to respect the hospitals. We got to respect the Palestinians. I think he's moving toward a more moderate position other than his total pro-Israeli stand. But there's still the pictures. There's still the horrible pictures we're seeing coming back from Gaza. And I don't know how we get out of this, except that we try to learn more about the history, try to learn more about the facts to put things in context. One of the problems now is that we have now adopted the modern way of debate, which is no debate. We've adopted the modern way of how information is spread, where I don't trust your facts, you don't trust mine. And so how do you have a debate under those circumstances? You don't. You have your turn to make noise and my turn to make noise. That's what's happening in America. And that is sad when you think about, well, we should have democratic or a democracy's discourse. We should be able to talk about these things. And instead, we prefer distraction or not talking about it. And then the people who really want to get their way end up getting their way because no one is talking about it. Well, that's a sad thing. But I hate to see that happening. The way we avoid it is by remembering we're on the same side. Side for peace. I mean, I don't like to see those pictures coming back from Gaza. I don't like to see Palestinians on the move with their 4-hour window that they can move. That just seems ridiculous. I want to see something that's fair for them and fair for Israelis. And one of the hopeful signs at the beginning of this, back in the early part of October, is that we know, because there have been public opinion polls taken back then, that there were people in Gaza who wanted a peaceful coexistence, that two-state solution, that people are now just beginning to talk about it again, like it's no longer a fantasy. But that's got to be the way. Because Hamas isn't it. And I'm starting to see journalists now say, look, you can be pro-Palestinian, but don't be an Hamas apologist. Because the act of terror on October 7th is real. Now, we need to focus in on the hostage situation and getting the hostages back and not committing any more violent acts that end up with scores dead, innocent civilians dead. We don't need that. All right. So APEC coming today or this week. And it's the other hotspot. Especially the Philippines, especially in the West China, South China, West Philippine Sea, the Spratly Islands, where China is like building their bases, thinking that no one sees, but everyone sees because they've got their satellite cameras affixed and they see that things are happening there. China's building bases because it's strategic. And those bases, not the bases, but the islands belong to the Philippines. And the Philippines is an ally of the U.S., and maybe that's what's going to bring on some kind of confrontation ultimately. So you want to know what's at stake? That's one of the things at stake. What happens when there's an altercation with China in the West Philippine Sea? That's just one issue. There are others. An Apex meeting in San Francisco this week. So keep your eye out on that. I'll keep my eye on that and some other things. Although, God, the city is going to be crazy. I mean, they're not telling you what to do. They're saying, here's a link. Find out where the roads are, how they affect you, and how that's going to make life miserable if you're just trying to get around. So we'll follow that. All right, that's it for our show. Don't forget to go to our YouTube channel at Emil Amok1 and check out my conversation with Professor Theodore Gonzalez of the Smithsonian Institution. He is an APA curator there at the Museum of Natural History. and knows a lot. He is the APA specialist, and he put together this book called APA Cultural, Historical, Artistic Objects 101, 101 Objects, where our story is told. It's a fascinating book. Gives you just enough to start a discussion and maybe even win a few bar bets. I mean, just on the idea of we're talking about the congressional medals. How many stars on the Filipino 1st Infantry ID badge for the Army? I mean, that might win you a free beer. Someone says, "Oh, I don't know how many," and then you say the answer. Oh, you get the answer in the book. Anyway, all right, back again tomorrow. We like to close our show with a little meditation. So we shall. Loving kindness. Metta. 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 And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Like I said, catch this show on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, Facebook, fb.com/Emil Guillermo Media, EmilGuillermo.media. This is show 603 if you're counting. And definitely check out Theo, my interview with Theo Gonzalez, the Smithsonian APA 101. That's on YouTube. Emil Amok 1. All right. Till next time. Mahal Kita.